Danny Foster had been putting off the trip to Montana for 3 months. His grandfather Edmund had passed away last spring, and a family lawyer kept calling about the property. Nobody wanted the old farm. It sat 40 miles from the nearest town, surrounded by nothing but prairie grass and wind. Danny's cousins had already picked through the farmhouse, taking what they wanted. That left him with the land and whatever junk filled the massive hangar out back. He pulled his truck off the highway onto the gravel road, watching dust kick up behind him. The property looked exactly like he remembered from childhood visits. Weathered fence posts, the old farmhouse with peeling paint, and that enormous hangar his grandfather had built back in the 80s. Edmund had always been secretive about that building. He never let anyone inside, claiming it was full of dangerous equipment and unstable materials. Danny parked near the hangar's main door. The structure was bigger than he remembered, easily large enough to hold several aircraft. Heavy chains and padlocks secure the entrance. He found the keys in the envelope the lawyer had given him, along with a handwritten note from his grandfather. Danny, you were always the curious one. You asked questions. You listened. What's inside belonged to someone who needed help. I did what I could. Now it's your choice. Trust your gut like I taught you. Granddad. The locks took some work. Rust had seized the mechanisms after years of weather. Danny finally got the last one open and pulled the chain free. The door's hinges screamed as he forced it wide enough to slip through. Darkness swallowed him whole. He fumbled for his flashlight and clicked it on. The beam cut through dust particles floating in the air like snow. As his eyes adjusted, Danny's breath caught in his throat. The IT wasn't farm equipment. A spacecraft sat in the center of the hangar, or what remained of one. The hull had been torn open in several places, exposing complex machinery inside. The design was nothing like the sleek galactic community vessels that occasionally visited Earth. This ship looked organic somehow, with curves and ridges that reminded him of bones or seashells. Danny walked around it slowly, his flashlight revealing more details. Scorch marks covered one side. Something had hit this craft hard. His grandfather had apparently spent decades trying to repair it. Tools lay scattered on workbenches. Detailed sketches covered the walls, showing various components and systems. Edmund had been reverse engineering alien technology in secret. A soft humming drew Danny deeper into the hangar. He found a doorway in the ship's side that had been carefully pried open. Inside, emergency lighting still functioned, casting everything in a pale blue glow. The corridor was narrow, but high-ceilinged, designed for something taller than humans. He followed the humming sound to a chamber at the ship's rear. 8 objects filled the room, each one mounted on a specialized platform. They looked like enormous eggs made of crystal or ice. Frost covered their surfaces so thick that Danny could barely see what lay inside. He approached the nearest one and wiped away some of the ice that the face stared back at him through the frozen barrier. Reptilian features, definitely, but somehow beautiful. Scales caught the light in shades of deep blue. Small horns curved back from the skull. The creature's eyes were closed, its body curled in a protective position. Danny stepped back, his mind racing. His grandfather had hidden alien creatures in this hangar for decades. Not just any aliens either. These looked like something from mythology. Dragons. Actual dragons frozen in time. That he noticed one egg was different from the others. Fine cracks spiderwebbed across its surface, and a faint glow pulsed from within. As Danny watched, another crack appeared with a soft popping sound. Whatever was inside had started waking up. A filing cabinet against the wall caught his attention. Inside, he found his grandfather's journals, dozens of them dating back to 1987. Danny opened the first one and started reading. July 15th, 1987. Saw something crash in the North Field tonight. Not a meteor. Controlled descent, or tried to be. Found a ship and bodies. Most dead on impact. But in the cargo hold, I found these eggs in some kind of cold storage. Still intact. Still alive, maybe. Called the Air Force. Called everyone I could think of. They said I was crazy. Said to stop wasting their time. The galactic community won't return my calls either. These creatures need help, and nobody cares. I'll do it myself. Danny flipped through more entries. His grandfather had taught himself alien engineering. He'd kept the ship's power systems running on minimal capacity, just enough to maintain the egg's frozen state. He'd researched every database he could access, trying to identify the species. The word drether appeared repeatedly in later journals, always with notes about extinction events and corporate mining operations. The egg cracked again, louder this time. Blue light spilled from the fractures. Danny moved closer, unsure what to do. Should he help it? Call someone? His grandfather's note echoed in his mind. Trust your gut. The egg split apart suddenly, pieces falling away to reveal the creature inside. It tumbled forward, and Danny lunged to catch it before it hit the floor. The dragon fit in his arms like a large dog might, though it weighed almost nothing. Its scales were warm to the touch despite coming from a frozen egg. It opened its eyes and looked directly at Danny. Intelligence burned in that gaze. This wasn't some animal. This was a person trapped in a different form. The dragon shivered violently, and Danny realized it was cold. He grabbed a tarp from nearby and wrapped the creature carefully, holding it close to share body heat. The dragon relaxed slightly, still shaking but no longer in distress. It made a sound somewhere between a chirp and a rumble, like it was trying to communicate. Danny had no idea what to do next. His phone had signal out here. He could call authorities. The galactic community had protocols for discovered alien species, but his grandfather's journals painted a dark picture of how extinct species were treated, especially valuable ones. The dragon nestled closer to him, seeking warmth and apparently seeking comfort too. It trusted him completely, the way a newborn might trust the first face it saw. Danny looked at the other 7 eggs, still frozen, but clearly containing more living creatures just like this one. His grandfather had protected them for almost 40 years that a ping from his phone made him jump. Email notification. Message from Galactic Customs and Border Protection. Unauthorized power signature detected at your location. Investigation team dispatched. Arrival in 48 hours. Do not attempt to move or tamper with any alien technology or biological materials. Danny looked down at the dragon in his arms. It had fallen asleep, exhausted from hatching. He thought about his grandfather's words. Trust your gut. His gut said these creatures deserved better than to become lab specimens or worse. They deserved a chance to live. Danny carried the dragon to his truck and came back for emergency supplies from the hangar. He had 2 days to figure out his next move, and something told him it wouldn't involve waiting around for Galactic Customs to arrive. The dragon refused to leave Danny's side. He tried setting it down in the farmhouse living room while he searched for supplies, but the creature had scrambled after him immediately, making distressed clicking sounds. So Danny worked one-handed, gathering blankets and food while cradling the dragon in his other ARMFIT had grown already. Just 2 hours after hatching, the creature was noticeably larger, now the size of a golden retriever. Its scales had darkened from pale blue to a deep color like ocean water. The horns on its head had hardened too, no longer soft and rubbery. When light hit them right, they sparkled like diamonds. Danny set up camp in the hangar. Going back to the farmhouse felt wrong somehow, like abandoning the other eggs. He built a nest of blankets near a space heater and settled the dragon into it. The creature immediately crawled out and pressed against Danny's leg instead. All right, I get it, Danny said. You want company. He sat down, and the dragon climbed into his lap, curling up like a cat. It was heavier now, maybe 60 pounds, but Danny didn't mind. The creature radiated warmth like a heating pad. Actually, more than that. The air around them was getting noticeably warmer. The dragon was generating heat somehow. Danny opened his grandfather's journals and started reading more carefully. Edmund had been meticulous in his research. Page after page detailed attempts to understand the ship's systems, decode its language, access its databases. Somewhere around the year 2000, he'd finally broken through. March 3rd, 2000. Got the main computer working today. Most files are corrupted, but I found crew logs. They call themselves Drether. Beautiful name. Beautiful people from what I can see in the videos. They were evacuating their homeworld. Some kind of disaster. Corporate mining operation went wrong. No, that's not right. When exactly is planned? They destroyed an entire planet for its resources. The Drether tried to evacuate everyone they could. This ship was carrying the last eggs. The last children. They almost made it. Danny felt sick. He looked at the dragon sleeping in his lap, one of the last survivors of a genocide. No wonder his grandfather had kept them secret. The corporations that destroyed their world would definitely want to eliminate any evidence. His phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Mr. Foster, this is Patricia Wu. Your grandfather contacted me about 15 years ago regarding a restoration project. He said if anything happened to him, I should reach out to whoever inherited the property. I run a salvage station near Jupiter. Independent operation. If you need somewhere off the grid, I can help. No questions asked. Danny stared at the message. His grandfather had planned for this scenario. Of course he had. Edmund had spent 40 years protecting these eggs. He would have set up contingencies. Another message came through, this time with an attachment. Your grandfather sent me this in case you needed convincing. Danny opened the video file. His grandfather's face filled the screen, looking older than Danny remembered, but with that same sharp intelligence in his eyes. Danny, if you're watching this, you found them. The Drether. I know you're probably scared and confused. I was too, but you've got a good heart, just like your grandmother did. That little one that hatched first, take care of it. The Drether bond for life. It shows you the moment you caught it. That means something. Patricia can be trusted. She's good people. Get to her station and figure out your next move from there. And Danny, whatever you decide, I'm proud of you. The video ended. Danny's throat felt tight. He'd never been particularly close to his grandfather. Edmund had been distant, always working on something in that hangar. Now Danny understood why. The man had been carrying an enormous secret and an enormous responsibility. The dragon stirred, lifting its head to look at Danny. Its eyes were remarkable, shifting colors from blue to green to gold. It made a questioning sound, like it sensed Danny's distress. Without thinking, Danny reached out to stroke its head. The dragon leaned into the touch. Purring that a jolt ran through Danny's mind. Not painful, just startling. Images flooded his consciousness. Not words exactly, but feelings and pictures. The dragon was trying to communicate. It showed him warmth, safety together. It showed him the other eggs, cold and alone, needing help. It showed him fire and ice, destruction and survival. Danny pulled his hand back, breathing hard. Did you just talk to me? The dragon tilted its head, those color-changing eyes fixed on his face. It reached out one clawed foot and gently touched Danny's hand. More images came, softer this time. The dragon showed him flying through space, stars all around, others of its kind beside it. Then darkness and cold. Then Danny's face, the first thing it had seen upon waking. Gratitude washed through the mental connection, so strong it brought tears to Danny's eyes. Okay, Danny said quietly. Okay, I understand. You need help. Your family needs help. I'll figure something out. He spent the next hour exploring the ship more thoroughly. His grandfather had made detailed maps of every system. The vessel's main power core was dead, but auxiliary batteries still held some charge. Environmental controls, navigation, communications, all offline. But the cryo system for the eggs worked perfectly. Edmund had jury-rigged it to Montana's power grid in the cockpit. Danny found something interesting. His grandfather had pulled panels off the walls, exposing the ship's control systems. Handwritten notes explained each component. Edmund had been trying to fly this thing. More than that, he'd apparently succeeded. According to the journal entries, he'd taken it on short test flights, always at night, always careful to avoid detection. The ship's too damaged for long-range travel, one entry read. But I got the local thrusters working. Could maybe reach orbit if I had to. Not that I'd know where to go from there. Danny looked at the dragon, which had followed him into the cockpit. Think you could help me fly this thing? The dragon chirped and touched its head to the main console. Lights flickered across the displays. Systems Danny hadn't known were functional started coming online. The creature was interfacing with the ship directly, probably the way the original crew had done that a holographic display materialized, showing star charts and navigation data. The dragon pulled its head back, looking exhausted from the effort, but the display remained active. Danny studied it carefully. One location was marked with a pulsing indicator. The text was in an alien language, but the coordinates were universal. Saturn's orbit, a small moon Danny didn't recognize. More of his grandfather's notes provided context. Found references to thermal venting sites. The Drether are thermivores. They eat heat energy directly. That's why the little one grows so fast near the heater. They need massive amounts of thermal energy to develop properly. The eggs won't wake up without it. Edmund had calculated that the moon near Saturn, with its volcanic activity, could provide enough heat to safely wake all 8 eggs. Danny's phone buzzed again. Email from Galactic Customs. Investigation team arriving ahead of schedule. ETA 18 hours. Prepare all materials for inspection and seizure. 18 hours. Not enough time to plan anything elaborate. Danny looked at the dragon, now about the size of a large dog and still growing. He looked at the 7 frozen eggs. He looked at the star charts showing a possible sanctuary. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. Trust your gut. Danny started loading supplies into the ship. The dragon helped, using its surprising strength to move heavy equipment. They worked together like they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. The mental connection between them made coordination easy. Danny would think about what he needed, and the dragon would understand by the time night fell. Everything was ready. The eggs were secured in the ship's cargo bay. The dragon had grown again, now the size of a small horse. It could barely fit through the ship's corridors. Danny wondered how big it would eventually get. He stood at the hangar door, looking out of the Montana sky. Stars glittered above like diamonds. Somewhere out, there was a moon that could save these creatures. All he had to do was steal an alien spacecraft, evade galactic authorities, and somehow survive a journey to Saturn in a half-broken ship. This is insane, Danny muttered. The dragon pressed against his side, radiating warmth and confidence. Through their connection, it showed him one clear image, the two of them together, facing whatever came next. Danny climbed into the cockpit and started the launch sequence his grandfather had documented. The ship's engines rumbled to life, shaking the entire hangar. He'd never flown anything more complex than a crop duster, and that was years ago. This was different. This was necessary. The hangar doors opened. Danny engaged the thrusters and lifted off into the night sky, leaving the only home he'd ever known behind to protect creatures he'd just met. His grandfather would have understood. Flying an alien spacecraft turned out to be easier than Danny expected, mostly because the dragon did half the work. The creature had grown large enough that it could no longer fit in the cockpit with him. Instead, it positioned itself in the corridor just behind Danny's seat, maintaining physical contact by resting one clawed foot on his shoulder. Through that touch, it guided him. When Danny needed to adjust course, the dragon would send him feelings of left or right, up or down. The ship responded to their combined input like it was designed for human and Drether teams. They cleared Earth's atmosphere within 20 minutes. Danny had expected alarms, interceptor craft, something to stop him. But his grandfather's modifications included decent stealth systems. The ship's signature read as space debris on most scanners. They slipped away from Earth like a ghost. Patricia Wu, this is Danny Foster, he said into the communication system. You said you could help. I'm taking you up on that offer. Static crackled for a moment before Patricia's voice came through. About time you called. I've been tracking your launch. Nice flying for a first-timer. Give me your heading, and I'll send you coordinates for my station. And Foster, you should know Galactic Customs has put out a warrant. You're officially a fugitive now. What are the charges? Theft of protected biological materials, unauthorized operation of alien technology, and my personal favorite, reckless endangerment of an extinct species. Patricia laughed, but it sounded bitter. They're calling you a criminal for saving those creatures. That's the galactic community for you. Danny checked his displays. The dragon helped him interpret the readouts. Fuel reserves were adequate for the journey to Jupiter. Life support systems functioned properly. The 7 eggs remained stable in their cryo chambers. Everything was working better than he had any right to expect. How long until I reach you? Danny asked. At your current speed, about 16 hours. I'm sending you a route that avoids the main shipping lanes. Corporate patrols are already looking for you. The company that destroyed the Drether homeworld has offered a substantial bounty. Dead or alive, apparently. The dragon's grip tightened on Danny's shoulder. Through their connection, he felt its fear and anger. These creatures understood far more than they could express. The dragon knew exactly what corporations had done to its people. I found something else in the ship's database. Patricia continued. Your grandfather sent me copies years ago. The Drether weren't just intelligent. They were empaths. They formed bonds with other species, deep connections that lasted lifetimes. Worlds that had Drether living on them were impossible to exploit because the dragons would defend their bonded partners. That's why the corporations wanted them extinct. Danny felt the dragon's emotions through their link. Pride in its people, grief for what was lost, determination to survive. He squeezed the clawed foot still resting on his shoulder. We're going to make it. All of us. The hours passed slowly. Danny took turns between piloting and checking on the eggs. The dragon followed him everywhere, never letting him get more than a few feet away. It had grown again during the flight. Now it was the size of a draft horse, with wings that folded tight against its body in the cramped corridors. The wings were new, developed in just the last few hours. Danny wondered what else these creatures could do. Patricia's station appeared on the scanners as they approached Jupiter's orbit. The facility was built into a captured asteroid, camouflaged to look like just another rock floating in space. Dozens of ships surrounded it, everything from small personal craft to massive cargo haulers. This was a haven for people who operated outside galactic regulations. Smugglers, prospectors, political refugees, anyone who needed to disappear. Welcome to Wu Station, Patricia said as Danny brought his ship into the docking bay. Try not to damage anything on your way in. That ship of yours is bigger than I expected. Danny managed to land without crashing, which felt like a victory. The docking bay pressurized, and he opened the ship's hatch. Patricia stood waiting, a woman in her 50s with gray hair tied back in a practical bun and grease stains on her coveralls. She looked like she'd been working on machinery her whole life. So where's this dragon I've been hearing about? She asked. The creature emerged from the ship, having to squeeze through the hatch sideways. It stood to its full height, nearly 10 feet tall now, and spread its wings. The bay's lights caught on its scales, creating patterns of blue and silver. Patricia took a step back, her eyes wide. That's not a dragon, she whispered. That's a god. The dragon folded its wings and approached Patricia carefully. It lowered its head, bringing itself down to her eye level, and made a soft, trilling sound. Danny felt the creature's intention through their bond. It was trying to show Patricia it meant no harm. Patricia reached out slowly and touched the dragon's snout. Her expression shifted from fear to wonder. It's warm, and I can feel it. Not with my hands, with my mind. Is that normal? They're empaths, Danny said. They share emotions. I think it's trying to tell you it's friendly. It's telling me a lot more than that. Patricia's voice was thick with emotion. I can feel its sadness, its hope, its gratitude to you. This is remarkable. Other people had gathered in the docking bay, station workers and residents curious about the new arrival. They stared at the dragon with a mixture of awe and fear. One of them, a young man with pilot's markings on his jacket, stepped forward. Is that really a Drether? I thought they were extinct. They were supposed to be, Danny said. There are 7 more eggs in the ship. They need help. The pilot looked at the dragon, then at Danny. I've heard stories about the Drether. My grandmother used to tell them. She said they were protectors, that they bonded with people and kept them safe. She said the galaxy was darker after they were gone. Your grandmother was right, Patricia said. She turned to address the growing crowd. Listen up. This man is wanted by Galactic Customs and every corporate bounty hunter in the system. Anyone who helps him is putting themselves at risk. But I'm going to help him anyway, because what happened to the Drether was wrong. Anyone who wants to leave, leave now. Anyone who stays, understand what you're getting into. Nobody moved. The pilot spoke up again. What do you need? Danny explained about the volcanic moon near Saturn. The dragon added its own input, sharing images through the mental connection that spread to everyone touching it or standing close by. They all saw the same vision, A place of fire and ice where the eggs could safely hatch. That's mining territory, someone in the crowd said. Corsair Corporation owns that moon. They've got automated defenses and patrol ships. They're also the ones who destroyed the Drether homeworld, Patricia added. They'll want these eggs destroyed before anyone finds out what they did. The pilot smiled grimly. Then we'll just have to get past them. I know those patrol patterns. Used to work for Corsair before I realized what kind of company they really were. I can help. Others stepped forward. An engineer who could improve the ship's stealth systems. A weapons specialist who'd served in Earth's Defense Force. A navigator who knew every shortcut in the outer system. Within an hour, Danny had a crew of volunteers, all willing to risk everything to help creatures they'd just met. The dragon seemed to understand what was happening. It moved through the crowd, touching people gently with its snout or wing tips. Each person it touched gasped as they felt the empathic connection. Danny watched their faces change from determination to something deeper. The dragon was bonding with them, not as strongly as with Danny, but enough to share its hope and trust. We need to move fast, Patricia said. I've been monitoring galactic channels. They know you're in this region. Corporate ships are on their way. Danny looked at his assembled crew, these strangers who'd become allies in minutes. He looked at the dragon, magnificent and vulnerable at once. He thought about the 7 eggs still frozen in the ship, waiting for a chance to live. Then let's get to work, Danny said. We've got a moon to reach and eggs to hatch. The dragon roared, a sound that echoed through the entire station. It wasn't a challenge or a threat. It was a promise. They would survive this. Together, human and Drether would prove that some bonds were stronger than corporate greed or political power. They would prove that extinction wasn't always permanent. The crew cheered and got to work. Danny had 16 hours before corporate ships arrived. 16 hours to prepare for a fight he couldn't afford to lose. But as he felt the dragon's confidence flowing through their bond, he started to believe they might actually pull this off. His grandfather had protected these creatures for 40 years. Now it was Danny's turn, and he wasn't alone anymore. The crew transformed Danny's damaged ship over the next 14 hours. The engineer, a woman named Sarah from the Mars colonies, improved the stealth systems using salvage galactic technology. The weapons specialist, a former soldier called Grant, installed defensive systems stripped from decommissioned patrol craft. The pilot, whose name was David, worked with Danny and the dragon to improve their flight coordination. Patricia coordinated everything from her station's command center. She'd pulled up every file Edmund Foster had sent her over the years, creating a complete database of Drether biology and needs. The information painted a picture of remarkable creatures. Drether didn't just eat heat energy. They could generate it, store it, and share it with others. They could survive in vacuum for short periods. They could sense electromagnetic fields and navigate by the stars themselves. Evolution had made them perfect for space travel. Your grandfather figured out something important, Patricia said, showing Danny one of Edmund's later journal entries. The eggs won't just hatch near any heat source. They need the right kind of thermal energy. Volcanic vents produce specific mineral signatures in their heat. The Drether homeworld was geologically active. The eggs are programmed to respond to that signature. So we definitely need that moon near Saturn, Danny said. Unfortunately, yes. I've been scanning for alternatives, but nothing else in the solar system matches the requirements. Patricia pulled up a tactical display. Here's our problem. The moon, designated Target 7 in corporate files, has automated defense systems. Laser platforms, missile batteries, the works. They're designed to protect mining equipment from pirates. David leaned over the display. I worked security for Corsair 5 years ago. Those systems have blind spots. They're programmed to ignore objects matching certain profiles, mainly corporate supply ships. If we can spoof our identification codes, we might slip through. Might isn't good enough, Grant said. We need certainty. Those eggs are irreplaceable. The dragon, which had been resting in the corner, lifted its head. It had continued growing, now barely fitting in the command center. The creature's presence seemed to calm everyone. Through the empathic connection, it shared feelings of confidence and strategy. The dragon understood what they were planning and wanted to help. Sarah spoke up. What if we don't try to hide? What if we use the dragon as a distraction? Those defense systems are automated. They'll prioritize the largest, most unusual target. If the dragon flies ahead of us, drawing fire, we could slip the ship through while they're focused on it. Absolutely not, Danny said immediately. I'm not using it as bait. The dragon made a sound like rolling thunder. Through their bond, Danny felt its determination. The creature wanted to do this. It was willing to risk itself to save its siblings. The Drether are built for this, Patricia said gently. According to your grandfather's research, they can withstand incredible damage. Their scales disperse energy weapons. They regenerate quickly, and they can fly faster than most missiles. Danny looked into the dragon's eyes. Those colors shifted from blue to gold to green, displaying emotions he was learning to read. The creature wasn't being reckless. It had thought this through. It knew its capabilities and accepted the risk. I don't like it, Danny said. The dragon touched its head to his chest, right over his heart. Warmth flooded through their connection, along with absolute trust. They were bonded. They would protect each other. But right now, the 7 frozen eggs needed protection more. All right, Danny said finally. But we do this smart. Full coordination. The second things go wrong, the dragon pulls back. They spent the next few hours refining the plan. David would pilot the ship, using his knowledge of corporate systems to spoof their identity. Sarah would manage stealth and defensive systems. Grant would handle weapons if needed. Danny would maintain the connection with the dragon, coordinating its movements. Patricia would run communications from her station, monitoring corporate channels for any response. The dragon underwent its own preparations. It practiced flying in the station's largest cargo bay, learning to maneuver in zero gravity. The creature was a natural, moving through space like it had been born to it, which, Danny reflected, it probably had been. The Drether were a space-faring species. This dragon was just remembering what its ancestors had known 0.2 hours before departure. Patricia called Danny to a private meeting. Her expression was serious. There's something you need to know, she said. I've been digging through corporate files, using some contacts I'd rather not mention. Corsair Corporation didn't just destroy the Drether homeworld. They've been systematically eliminating any evidence that the Drether existed, wiping databases, destroying artifacts, silencing anyone who asks questions. Why go to such lengths? Because the Drether represented a threat to their entire business model. Think about it. A species that bonds with others and protects them. Worlds with Drether couldn't be exploited. The dragons would fight back. It wasn't just about mining one planet. It was about removing an obstacle to corporate expansion across the galaxy. Danny felt sick. So if we succeed, if we hatch these eggs, we prove the Drether aren't extinct. We prove Corsair committed genocide. We change everything. Patricia grabbed his shoulder. But Danny, that also means they'll do anything to stop us. Anything. This isn't just about catching a fugitive anymore. This is about covering up the biggest crime in modern galactic history. The weight of what they were attempting settled on Danny's shoulders. This wasn't just a rescue mission. It was a political act, a statement that would ripple across the entire galactic community. Success meant justice for the Drether. Failure meant their extinction would be complete. The dragon entered the room, somehow sensing Danny's distress. It pressed against him, sharing strength and resolve through their bond. They weren't alone in this. They had each other. They had the crew. They had a chance. I'm ready, Danny said. The crew assembled in the docking bay. Their ship looked nothing like it had when Danny first stole it from his grandfather's hangar. New hull, plating covered the damage. Upgraded systems hummed with power. Fresh paint made it look almost legitimate. Almost. Danny took his position in the cockpit. The dragon waited in the cargo bay, ready to launch when needed. The 7 eggs were secured in reinforced chambers, their cryo systems functioning perfectly. Everything was ready. All ships. This is Wu Station Control. Patricia's voice came through the comm system. You are clear for departure. Good luck out there. And Danny, your grandfather would be proud. Danny engaged the engines. The ship lifted smoothly from the docking bay and oriented towards Saturn. Dozens of other craft launched simultaneously, volunteers from the station forming a loose escort. They wouldn't follow all the way to the moon, but they provide cover during the initial journey, making it harder for corporate ships to single out Danny's vessel. David took over piloting as they entered the main shipping lanes. He flew like he'd been born in space, weaving between cargo haulers and passenger liners with ease. The spoofed identification codes worked perfectly. To any scanner, they were just another supply ship heading to the outer system. Hours passed. Earth fell behind them. Mars came and went. They crossed the asteroid belt without incident. Jupiter loomed ahead, massive and beautiful, its great red spots swirling in eternal storm patterns. And beyond Jupiter, Saturn waited with its rings and moons. Corporate patrol ahead, David said suddenly. 3 ships. They're running active scans. Will our codes hold? Danny asked. Should, but those are military-grade scanners. If they look too close. The Dragon stirred in the cargo bay. Through their connection, Danny felt its readiness. If things went wrong now, they were prepared to fight. But fighting here, in open space with civilians nearby, would be a disaster. The patrol ships approached. Their scans washed over Danny's vessel. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then the patrol ships altered course and flew past without slowing. We're clear, David said, exhaling slowly. They bought it. Sarah grinned from her station. My coding is perfect. Told you it would work. They continued towards Saturn, tension slowly easing. The hard part was still ahead, but they'd cleared the first major obstacle. Corporate space gave way to the outer system, where jurisdiction was murky and regulations meant less. Here, might and determination mattered more than laws. The volcanic moon appeared on their scanners, a small gray sphere orbiting Saturn alongside dozens of others. Heat signatures showed active vents across its surface. Perfect conditions for hatching Drether eggs. Perfect bait for a trap. Defense systems are active, Grant reported. I count 20 weapon platforms and twice as many sensor arrays. They'll detect us the moment we enter their perimeter. Danny stood and headed for the cargo bay. The Dragon waited there, magnificent and ready. It had grown again during the journey, now massive enough that it barely fit through the ship's corridors. Soon it would be too large to stay inside at all. You sure about this? Danny asked, knowing the answer. The Dragon touched its snout to Danny's forehead. Images flowed through their bond. The two of them flying together. The eggs hatching. A family reunited. Victory snatched from certain defeat. The Dragon was sure. Absolutely certain. Then let's do this, Danny said that he opened the cargo bay doors. Stars glittered beyond. The Dragon spread its wings and leaped into space. The Dragon looked like a comet streaking through space. It flew directly at the moon's defense perimeter, wings spread wide, scales reflecting starlight. Every sensor on the automated platforms locked onto it immediately. This was exactly what they'd hoped for. Defense systems are targeting the Dragon, Grant reported. All of them. They're ignoring us completely. David pushed the ship's engines hard, diving toward the moon's surface while the platforms focused on the larger, more unusual target. Laser fire lit up space around the Dragon. The creature dodged and weaved, moving faster than any ship could match. When beams did connect, they scattered off its scales like water off glass. Danny maintained their mental connection, feeling every moment of the Dragon's flight. The creature was exhilarated, not afraid. This was what it was built for. Missiles launched from the platforms, dozens of them. The Dragon breathed fire, actual flames in the vacuum of space, destroying missiles before they could connect. Danny hadn't known they could do that. We're through the perimeter, David announced, setting down near the largest vent system. The ship touched down on rough terrain. Through the viewports, Danny saw geysers of superheated water erupting from cracks in the moon's surface. Steam and minerals created clouds that glowed in Saturn's reflected light. It was beautiful and violent, exactly what they needed. Get those eggs to the vents, Sarah said. I'll set up the portable shields. Grant, watch for any ground-based security. They worked with desperate efficiency. Danny and David carried the first egg out of the ship. It was heavy, requiring both of them to lift it. They positioned it near a vent where superheated water sprayed into space. The egg's surface immediately began to glow. The frozen exterior started melting. "It's working," Danny said. "Get the others." Above them, the dragon continued its dance with the defense systems. It had destroyed half the missile platforms and disabled several laser batteries. But more weapons were coming online. The automated systems were adapting, learning the dragon's patterns. Sooner or later, they'd score a solid hit. The crew positioned all 7 eggs around different vents. Heat washed over them, far more intense than anything on Earth. Danny's suit registered dangerous temperature warnings, but he ignored them. The eggs glowed brighter, cracks appearing across their surfaces. They were waking up. "We got company," Grant said suddenly. "Corporate ships incoming. 3 heavy cruisers and a carrier." Sarah checked her instruments. "They'll be in firing range in 10 minutes. Danny, we need that dragon back here now." Danny reached out through their bond. The dragon felt his call and disengaged from the defense platforms, diving toward the moon's surface. It landed hard, breathing heavily. Scorch marks covered its scales where laser fire had gotten through. The creature was hurt, but still functional. The first egg split open. A drether tumbled out, scales the color of fresh snow. It was smaller than Danny's dragon had been at hatching, probably malnourished from the long freeze. The newborn made pitiful sounds, shivering despite the heat. Danny's dragon moved to it immediately, pressing close and sharing warmth. Through their bond, Danny felt the older dragon's protective instincts surge. Another egg cracked. Then another. Within minutes, 6 more drether emerged, each one different. White, gold, green, red, black, and silver scales. Some larger, some smaller. All of them weak and disoriented. The first dragon tried to care for them all, moving between siblings and sharing its energy. "The corporate ships are launching fighters," David reported from the ship. "We got maybe 5 minutes." The 7th egg remained intact. No cracks, no glow, nothing. Danny approached it carefully and pressed his hand to the surface. Cold. It was still frozen inside despite the vent's heat. Something was wrong. Sarah joined him. The cryo system must have failed at some point. This one might be too damaged to wake. We can't leave it. We might have to. Danny, those ships will blow us apart if we stay. The first dragon roared, a sound that echoed across the barren moon. The 6 newborns responded, their voices joining in a chorus. They were weak, but they were alive. And they were angry. Through his bond with the first dragon, Danny felt what they all felt. This was their sibling in that frozen egg. They wouldn't abandon family. The newborns struggled to their feet. They were too young to fly, barely able to walk. But they gathered around the 7th egg, pressing against it, sharing what little warmth they had. The first dragon joined them, positioning itself at the center of the group. Heat radiated from all 7 drether, combining and intensifying. The frozen egg began to glow. Impossible ça whispered. They're generating enough heat to rival a fusion reactor. The corporate fighters screamed overhead, weapons firing. Grant returned fire from the ship's defensive systems, creating a screen of explosions between them and the attacking craft. David worked the controls frantically, trying to get the ship's engines back online for a quick escape. Patricia's voice crackled through the comm system. "Danny, I'm picking up something on the galactic networks. News feeds. Someone's broadcasting your location live. The whole galaxy is watching this." "Who's broadcasting?" "I am," said a new voice. One of the volunteers from Wu Station, the young pilot. "Every species, every world, they're all seeing this right now. They're seeing the Drether. They're seeing what Corsair Corporation is doing." The frozen egg shattered. A dragon emerged, larger than the others, with scales that shifted between every color like an oil slick. It looked at Danny first, then at its siblings, then at the attacking fighters. The newborns spread wings that shouldn't have been developed yet and roared defiance at the sky. All 8 drether began to glow. Heat poured off them in waves that distorted the air itself. They were linking somehow, sharing power between them. The first dragon, Danny's dragon, stood at the center of the formation. It reached out through their bond. Images flooded Danny's mind. The 8 dragons flying together, fighting together, surviving together. But they needed direction. They needed someone to guide them. They needed their bonded partners. "Everyone out of the ship," Danny ordered. Now, his crew emerged, confused but trusting. The dragons moved toward them, each one approaching a different person. The white dragon went to Sarah, the golden one to David, the red one to Grant. The others chose crew members who'd help prepare the mission. And the rainbow-scaled dragon approached Patricia, who'd just arrived in a small shuttle. Each dragon touched its chosen person. The empathic bonds formed instantly. Danny felt it through his connection with the first dragon. Suddenly, it wasn't just him and one creature. It was all of them, human and Drether, linked together in a web of shared emotion and purpose. "They're bonding with us," Patricia said, wonder in her voice. "All of them. We're family now." The corporate fighters made another pass. This time, the dragons responded as one. They didn't breathe fire. They didn't attack directly. Instead, they generated a heat shield that covered the entire landing site. Missiles detonated harmlessly against it. Laser fire scattered. The fighters couldn't touch them. The corporate commander's voice came through the comm system. "All units, stand down. I repeat, stand down." "Sir, we have them pinned," one of the fighter pilots responded. "No, you don't. Look at your scanners. Those creatures are generating enough power to slag this entire moon. If they release it all at once, everyone dies, including us. Stand down." The fighters pulled back. The heavy cruisers maintained their position, but stopped advancing. An uneasy standoff settled over the battlefield. Danny's dragon released the heat shield slowly. The 8 Drethers stood together, wings spread, protecting their bonded humans. They looked magnificent and terrifying, exactly what their species must have been before the extinction. "The whole galaxy is watching," Patricia reminded him through her dragon's shared connection. "What happens next matters." Danny stepped forward, his dragon beside him. He activated his suit's external speakers. "My name is Danny Foster. These creatures are Drether, the last survivors of species that was deliberately exterminated by Corsair Corporation. They're intelligent. They're peaceful. They were just trying to survive. And they've bonded with us because humans gave them a chance when the rest of the galaxy had given up on them." Silence from the corporate ships. But Danny knew others were listening. Millions of beings across the galaxy, watching through the broadcast. "The Drether aren't extinct anymore," Danny continued. "And they're not alone. If you try to finish what you started, you'll have to go through all of us. Humans and Drether together. So I'm giving you a choice. Leave now, or find out what happens when you push us too far." The dragons roared in unison. The sound carried across space somehow, powerful and clear. 8 voices joined as one, declaring their right to exist. The corporate ships began to withdraw, slowly at first, then faster. They disappeared into the void, leaving Danny and his crew alone on the moon with 8 impossible creatures. Patricia laughed, giddy with relief and exhaustion. "We did it. We actually did it." The dragons settled down, exhausted from the effort of hatching and fighting. The humans sat among them, connected through bonds that would last their entire lives. Above them, Saturn hung in the sky like a giant jewel. And somewhere out there, the galaxy was watching, learning that extinction wasn't always permanent, and that sometimes the smallest acts of compassion could change everything. The broadcast changed everything. Within hours, every major news network across the galactic community was showing footage of the Drether. The dragons flying through space. The moment of bonding. The standoff with corporate forces. Billions of beings watched and shared and debated. The Drether weren't just alive. They were magnificent. Danny sat on the moon's surface, his back against his dragon's side, watching Saturn rise. The dragon had nearly doubled in size since the battle, now large enough to carry Danny on its back. The other 7 dragons rested nearby with their bonded humans, all of them recovering from the intensity of the past days. Patricia's voice came through the comm system. "Danny, you need to hear this. Earth's government is calling. So is the Galactic Council. And about 300 news agencies want interviews. Tell them I'm busy. Busy doing what? sitting on a rock, busy figuring out what comes next. Danny looked at the dragons. They can't stay here. This moon belongs to a corporation that wants them dead. We need somewhere safe. Sarah approached with her white-scaled dragon following. I've been monitoring galactic channels. Public opinion is overwhelmingly in favor of the Drether. 17 different species have condemned the extinction event. 12 have offered sanctuary. The Corsair Corporation is under formal investigation. That doesn't mean we're safe, Grant said. His red dragon lounged beside him like a giant cat. Corporations don't give up just because they're under investigation. They'll try again, quieter this time. David nodded. His golden dragon chirped agreement. We need political protection, official recognition, something that makes it illegal to hunt them. Danny's dragon lifted its head and touched his shoulder. Images flowed through their bond. Not just the 8 of them surviving, but thriving, teaching others about their species, showing the galaxy what the Drether had been and could be again. But to do that, they needed more than sanctuary. They needed a home. Earth, Danny said suddenly. We take them to Earth. The crew looked at him like he was crazy. Patricia's voice came through the comm, skeptical. Earth just joined the galactic community. They barely have a voice in galactic politics. How would taking the dragons their help? Because Earth is the one planet where public opinion actually matters, Danny explained. The government listens to its people, more or less. And humans love underdog stories. We love protecting things everyone else has given up on. If we can get Earth to formally offer sanctuary, other species will follow. The corporations will fight it, Sarah said. Let them. This whole thing is being broadcast live, remember? Every move they make against us is another piece of evidence. Every threat is more proof that they're trying to cover up genocide. His dragon rumbled approval. The other dragons chirped and trilled, communicating with each other in ways Danny was beginning to understand. They were discussing it among themselves, consulting through the bonds with their human partners. After a moment, all 8 dragons turned to look at Danny and voiced their agreement as one. All right then, Patricia said. Let me make some calls. We're going to need a lot of help to pull this off. Over the next week, Wu Station became command central for the strangest political movement in galactic history. Patricia coordinated with human governments, independent colonies, sympathetic alien species, and anyone else willing to support the Drether cause. The dragons remained on the moon, growing stronger each day, practicing their abilities under the guidance of their bonded partners. Danny discovered his dragon could do far more than breathe fire and fly. It could detect electromagnetic fields across vast distances. It could survive in hard vacuum indefinitely. It could generate localized gravity fields for short periods. The other dragons demonstrated similar abilities, each one unique to their individual nature. They were learning together, human and Drether, figuring out capabilities that had been lost when the species was destroyed. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. An elderly alien researcher named Toth contacted them through secure channels. I worked with the Drether before the extinction, Toth explained. I was part of a research team studying their bonding capabilities. We tried to warn the Galactic Council that Corsair Corporation was planning something terrible. They ignored us. After the extinction, I was forced into hiding. But I kept all my research. Everything I learned about your species. If you're truly bringing them back, you'll need this information. Toth's files were extensive. Detailed biology, psychology, social structures, everything needed to understand the Drether properly. Danny read through them obsessively. The dragons weren't just empathic. They were designed by evolution to form symbiotic relationships with other intelligent species. On their home world, they'd bonded with multiple species, creating a civilization where different forms of intelligence work together naturally. That's why the corporations wanted them extinct, Patricia said after reviewing the files. The Drether made exploitation impossible. Any world they lived on became a true partnership between species. No single group could dominate or abuse the others. Then we need to make sure everyone knows that, Danny said. The dragons aren't just survivors. They're proof that a different kind of society is possible. Earth's government finally agreed to offer formal sanctuary. The decision wasn't unanimous, But public pressure was overwhelming. Humans had been watching the broadcasts. They'd seen the dragon's beauty and intelligence. They'd seen Danny and his crew risk everything to protect them. The story resonated with something deep in human nature, that impulse to help the helpless and shelter the vulnerable. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks. The dragons flew alongside Danny's ship most of the way, only coming inside when they needed rest. They'd grown large enough that only 2 could fit inside at once. When they flew in formation, they looked like a constellation moving through space. News crews documented every moment. The galaxy watched as the Drether approached Earth for the first time. Humanity welcomed them with celebrations in every major city. People lined the streets when Danny and the dragons landed at the designated sanctuary in Montana, not far from his grandfather's old farm. The property had been transformed. Buildings for research and care. Open spaces for the dragons to fly. Geothermal vents installed to provide the heat they needed. Hundreds of volunteers ready to help. It was imperfect, but it was a start. Danny stood with his dragon in the center of the new sanctuary. The other 7 dragons and their bonded humans gathered around them. Media drones captured everything from dozens of angles. The Galactic Council was watching. So were the corporations. So were billions of ordinary beings across the galaxy. "This is just the beginning," Danny said to the cameras. "The Drether are back. They're protected, and they're not alone. Humanity stands with them. And we invite every species that believes in justice and partnership to stand with them too. The extinction is over. A new era begins today." His dragon roared, and the sound echoed across the Montana sky. The other dragons joined in, their voices mixing into a harmony that seemed to resonate with something fundamental in the universe. They were alive. They were free. They were home. The months that followed brought changes no one could have predicted. Earth became a hub for interspecies cooperation research. Scientists from dozens of species came to study the human Drether bonds. The dragons shared their knowledge freely, teaching others about empathy and partnership. Slowly, more species began questioning the corporate structures that had dominated galactic politics for centuries. Corsair Corporation collapsed under the weight of investigations and boycotts. Other corporations that had profited from exploitation faced similar pressure. It wasn't a revolution exactly, but it was a shift. The galaxy was learning that some things were more valuable than profit. Danny visited his grandfather's grave regularly. His dragon always came with him, settling nearby while Danny talked to the marker. "You'd be proud of how they've grown," Danny told Edmund. "All 8 of them are healthy now. Strong. They're teaching us as much as we're teaching them. You saved them, Granddad. You gave them 40 years that nobody thought they'd have. That was enough to make all the difference." The dragon touched Danny's shoulder gently. Through their bond, he felt what it wanted to share. Gratitude for Edmund. Gratitude for Danny. Gratitude for the second chance that nobody expected. Patricia's Woo Station had become an official sanctuary for threatened species. A dozen different groups now lived there, protected by volunteers and watched over by dragons who visited regularly. The old salvage operation had transformed into something meaningful, a place where beings who'd been discarded or hunted could find safety. The crew stayed together. Sarah continued her engineering work, now developing technology that could help other endangered species. Grant trained security forces in non-lethal defense methods. David piloted missions to rescue other threatened groups. They'd found their calling in protecting the vulnerable, guided by the dragons who become their partners and friends. One morning, Danny woke to find his dragon agitated. Through their bond, he felt its urgency. Something important was happening. He followed the dragon to the sanctuary's main hall where all 8 Drether had gathered. They stood in a circle, heads touching, humming in unison. "What are they doing?" Patricia asked, arriving with her own dragon. "I don't know. I'm getting images, but they're not clear." The humming intensified. Heat radiated from the dragons, making the air shimmer. And then Danny understood. They were calling out through space, using some method of communication that transcended normal physics. They were searching for others of their kind. "Do you think there could be more survivors?" Sarah asked. Todd's files mentioned that several ships escaped before the homeworld was destroyed, Danny said. We found one ship. There could be others. Other eggs frozen and hidden, waiting for someone to wake them. The dragon's call continued for hours. When they finally stopped, exhausted but hopeful, Danny felt what they felt. Somewhere out there in the vast galaxy, something had answered. Faint and distant, but real. The Drether weren't quite as extinct as everyone had thought. We're going to need a bigger sanctuary, Patricia said, smiling. Danny looked at his dragon, at the magnificent creature that had chosen him for reasons he still didn't fully understand. Then we'll build one. However many there are, however long it takes, we'll find them all. We'll give them the same chance Granddad gave these 8. The dragon's colors shifted to warm golds and blues, reflecting contentment and determination. Through their bond, Danny felt the creature's absolute certainty. Together, they would succeed. Human and Drether, partners in a quest to undo an extinction and prove that compassion was stronger than greed. The story had started with one man finding frozen eggs in his grandfather's hangar. It continued with a desperate flight across the solar system. It culminated in a stand against corporate power and deliberate genocide. But the real story, Danny realized, was just beginning. Every day brought new discoveries about what the Drether could do and what humans could learn from them. Every day brought new allies to their cause. Every day proved that some extinctions could be reversed if enough people care to try. Danny Foster had inherited a dusty hangar and a secret. He'd gained a dragon, a crew, a purpose, and a future. His grandfather would have approved. Edmund had spent 40 years keeping hope alive. Now Danny would spend the rest of his life making sure that hope became reality for every Drether still waiting to be found. Above them, the Montana sky stretched wide and blue. The 8 dragons took flight together, their bonded humans watching from below. They climbed higher and higher, dancing on thermal currents, celebrating their freedom and their future. They were the last of their kind. They were the first of a new generation. They were proof that endings could become beginnings if the right people refused to give up. And somewhere in the vast galaxy, other frozen eggs waited in the darkness, dreaming of warmth and voices calling them home.